For this project I have taken on the role of a character artist. The model I have created is a sci-fi creature. To achieve this I use three programs: 3ds Max for small modelling elements, ZBrush for sculpting, Substance Painter for texturing and rendering the final images, and Photoshop for finalising the rendered images using editing techniques. The three main tasks for this assignment were: take on a professional role within the gaming industry, produce the work to a professional standard that is portfolio worthy, and do extensive research on my chosen role, which in my case is a character artist. There were two video game franchises that were very influential in my work, and these were Dead Space and Metro. Both games are in the sci-fi genre, which fits my original vision, which was to have my final piece be able to fit within these two game universes. My main source of inspiration came from looking at several concept art, more specifically that of the necromorph enemy that you go up against in the Dead Space game. My personal goals for this project were to improve on my ZBrush skills, as I am confident I will be using this program a lot in the future. I also would like to get better at Substance Painter, as it's a very powerful tool for creating materials, for not only characters like this one, but for hard surface models like tables and doors. By the end of this project, I want to have a model that I am genuinely satisfied with. This means that it will be the best character art piece I have done, as well as confidently say I can see improvement from this piece compared to my last. I like to do my work in stages. For stage 1, you have to gather enough reference and create a mood board. In my case, as my creature has several features which include bubbly, pale, bruised and stretchy skin in places, I will have to find examples for all of these. Stage 2 is sculpting, the most important step in the process and the one that takes the most time. Stage 3 is texturing. It's not to be taken lightly. You could have an amazing sculpt, but if there hasn't been enough time on texturing, then it won't look good. Stage 4 is rendering. Experimentation with the lighting could enhance the model's final look. Finally, stage 5, which is presentation, where you work in Photoshop to further enhance the rendered images. The process. I did most of the modelling process within ZBrush and did it in 3 steps. Step 1 was to get a good overall shape for the model. Create a good base where details will be added later. For this stage, it's good to hint towards where everything is. For example, if you look at this image, you can see I have indentations for where the eyes are going to be. Step 2 is where you add in all the larger details such as the eyes and nose. You don't have to go too over the top with detail in this stage, as it can be done later on. This is when it's also a good time to make any big final changes to the model. What I mean by this is altering the shape of the nose and eyes, for example. Step 3 is where you're getting as much detail in as possible. This part is where I included the eyeballs. It's also not too late to make little changes here and there. Just make sure it's nothing drastic. Sometimes I may become dissatisfied with the amount of detail on my model once I've finished the sculpting process. This isn't that much of an issue for me, as I can add extra detail when I'm doing the texturing. Once in Substance Painter, I tend to use a low opacity brush to add extra detail such as scars and wrinkles. In some cases I like to work around the eyes and nose to bring these features out a bit more. With all that being said, I do prefer to make sure that I am confident that I have the right amount of detail before I move on to texturing the model. Many alterations were made throughout the sculpting stage. One example, my original plan was for the character to have fang-like teeth coming out of its mouth, but after getting advice from several sources I changed it so the character would have more human-like teeth. This actually made sense as the original form of the creature was human. Here you can see my creature analysis. I like to make up an analysis or backstory for my characters before I actually make them, because it gives me a good visual in my head for what I want to achieve. Also, as this project is linked to my CMP project, this analysis will come in handy for when I create my environment later on. Here are my final beauty shots of the creature. These were all rendered and captured in Substance Painter. Throughout the rendering process, I had a go at having different lighting scenarios to see what worked best with the model. I did this by changing the environment map and aperture settings within Substance Painter. Here are my results. These are 3 different scenarios, and as you can see, some work better than others. From the beginning to the end of the texturing stage, it is good practice to look at each individual channel when creating your material. Through my research, I found that one common mistake that can be made is that you may not notice how rough something is until you get to rendering it and find out something is too shiny once you've played around with the lighting. This could sometimes mean you may have to go back and alter your whole texture, which may be time consuming. I made a similar mistake when I realised the skin on my characters was way too shiny, which took away from the realism. As I quickly stated earlier, this piece will be a part of my CMP project, which will be an environment piece. The general idea is to include the creature and make it a prop within the scene. In conclusion, I feel I successfully took on the role as a character artist. I presented the final piece in a professional manner, and I feel the piece shows personal improvement in my texturing and sculpting skills.